Welcome to Mack and Guru Sports, where we bring you the most uncensored, unfiltered, and kick-ass sports on the web. Enjoy. Chicago Bulls coach Tom Thibodeau was fired after a disappointing second-round defeat at the hands of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Bulls have recently hired former executive, former Iowa State coach, and Bulls alum Fred Hoiberg as the new coach. Mac, what's your thought on the hire and why?
I think the hire is definitely typical Bulls. Playing it safe, going to get a guy who's a former Bull, a college coach. Years back when they fired Phil Jackson, they hired Tim Floyd just to kind of start that transition after you had some successful seasons. So the 5 years with Tom Thibodeau, you went on a decent run. You had some years where you thought you could win a championship, and now they're kind of in a transition. So I think this hire is more just playing it safe, going to get a guy who's not as comes with a lot of attitude or is that aggressive. It's just a typical Bulls thing that they're doing, and I believe that going forward, they'll have some success. But Fred Hoiberg is an unproven guy, so we don't know, too much about what he's going to be able to do in terms of the relationship with the players. I think bringing that system that he's going to bring is going to fit right in with the league. And then I like picking up the assistant coach from the Spurs, defensive guy. So he'll come in and help on the defensive side to kind of seal things up for him. But the hire is just – it's a big question mark. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's what the Bulls do. And, we just have to be content with it, content with the move because, obviously you weren't going to hire a Mark Jackson, another aggressive personality who just was fired, in Golden State because of – his problems with upper management. So it was a safe move. It was a Bulls move. This is what they do, and I'm iffy about it, but it is what it is.
Who would you have liked to see as the next coach? Would you have stayed with Thibodeau as a coach? Did you like Alvin Gentry, a hot assistant who has NBA experience that got the Pelicans job? Another college coach, an NBA assistant, a former head coach. Who would you like have seen get the Bulls job?
I think Alvin Gentry would have been the best hire. A guy that's with Golden State right now, has some experience as a coach, as an assistant coach, has been on winning teams. I think that would have been the best hire. Going forward, I'm not really optimistic about the Bulls, so. It's this is going to be probably we're close to a rebuilding situation. We have Derrick Rose with his knee situation. We have Paul Gasol. He's 35 years old. And then we also hear rumblings about Paul Gasol, Gibson, and Noah possibly, all being in some trade rumors. So we don't know who's going to be here this season. Dunleavy is a free agent as well, so along with Aaron Brooks. So we don't know who's going to be on this team next season, but this is definitely a transitional point, close to possibly rebuilding soon. So they didn't have to go get the big stud coach at this particular time. I think the next coach that may take them to the next level will be the next hire after this. This is just, to me, more of a transitional point.
I like Fred Hoiberg a lot. He has the qualities of a great leader, a great communicator, things we knew that Tom Thibodeau wasn't. He wasn't a good communicator. He wasn't that young pace and space coach. In this league today, teams are playing with pace. Over the 5 years Thibodeau was here, the Bulls were one of the slowest teams as far as pace goes. This old school half-court feed-the-post system that the Bulls had was not working. With Niko Mirotic, with Doug McDermott, with Tony Snell, you have shooters. With Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler, you have guys who can create their own shots, guys who can get to the hole, guys who can draw fouls. With this new system Hoiberg is going to implement, you have so many more options. It's not this isolation, one-on-one basketball of yesteryear. It's a new, fast-paced, spread the floor, shooting threes game. And with what Hoiberg did at Iowa State, I believe they were number one in the NCAA, or at least top 5 in pace. They ran up and down, they passed the ball, they hit the three-point shot, and that made them very successful. Fred Hoiberg, like I said, has all the natural leadership qualities. He was a player in the league, so he's going to come in as a player as coach. He knows what these $1 million athletes go through. He was a $1 million athlete, and it wasn't at the level of a Derrick Rose or Paul Gasol or Joakim Noah, but he knows the psyche of an NBA player. He was an NBA player. He also was an NBA executive, so he knows personnel. He knows drafting. He knows trading. He knows signing guys to the developmental league. So he has experience as an executive. And then he has head coaching experience. And it may not be at the NBA level, but 5 years at Iowa State, he was very successful. Led them to 2 Big 12 championships, led them to a Sweet 16 berth. In this new age NBA, I think he's the perfect fit for the Chicago Bulls. And as much as the Bulls may have won a yes man, I think the Bulls still want to win. And the Bulls see 20,000 fans every night. They want to win a championship. And with Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler and Niko Mirotic, the future and the present is still really bright. Now, you do have to look at the age on Paul Gasol. You do have to look at the injury to Joakim Noah. He played a lot slower than he has in his career this past year. You got to look at Taj Gibson, hasn't improved. And in the Fred Hoiberg system, it's a premium on athletic wings and shooters. And the Bulls are stuck with 3 guys in Gibson, Gasol, and Noah who either can't shoot in the case of Noah and Gibson or can't run in the case of Gasol. So they're going to have to make some adjustments, but I think Fred Hoiberg is a great hire. I think he's going to do a great job, and I think the arrow is pointing up for the Chicago Bulls franchise. The NBA draft is fast approaching. The Bulls hold the 22nd pick in this year's draft. Mac, what do the Bulls need to come out of in this draft?
I think they need to come out of this draft with a combo guard. They're going to be a little short with Heinrich possibly leaving, Dunleavy possibly leaving, Aaron Brooks possibly leaving. So I would try to approach guard situations. I think that you'll have enough 4s and 5 that you should be fine. Snell and McDermott at the 3. Butler can play some 3. But I think you really need to approach the guard situation, especially point guard. Behind Derrick Rose, he's still going to have some problems with his knees going forward. So if you can get a guy to come in and spare him some quality minutes, that would be very important. So I think they're picking it around 22nd. So it'd be very important if they can, target a guard, maybe Cameron Payne, a Tyrus Jones, a guard that can just come in and give him some solid minutes and really help Derrick Rose so he can cut down on some of those minutes and be able to push the ball as well in this new offense that Fred Hoiberg is going to be running for the Bulls.
At 22nd, I agree with you. I think the Bulls do have enough bigs. Maybe in the second round, they could possibly get another big just to add to the rotation. But at 22nd, I think a combo guard is needed. At the 3rd, ball handler. behind Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler, who are the two primary ball handlers we have. They need a combo guard. I would like a guy like Jerian Grant from Notre Dame. He's 6'5", 200 pounds, can play the off guard position as well as the point guard position. Averaged 6.6 assists at Notre Dame. Led them within a bucket of upsetting Kentucky in the tournament this past year. Another player I like is R.J. Hunter. He's a long-range shooter in the two-guard range. Can't do much from a ball handling aspect, but he's a knockdown shooter. And with the offense that Hoiberg is implementing, the more shooters, the better. Derrick Rose may just be a 65, 70 game player the rest of his career. So you do need to add that depth. You know, Kirk Heinrich is on the wrong side of 30. Kirk Heinrich was one of the least productive players at his position last year. So with Aaron Brooks probably leaving as a miniature point guard backup, I would love somebody with some size, a guy who can back up Rose, but play alongside Rose too. So, like I said, Jerian Grant is an impressive kid. He probably won't be available at 22, but he could slide to 22. R.J. Hunter is a shooter. You mentioned Cameron Payne, who's rising up a lot of draft boards. So, you know, the Bulls will probably have to trade up to get him. But that combo guard, 6'2", 6'3", would be a perfect fit for the Bulls. And a guy who can score and play alongside Rose would be great for the Chicago Bulls organization. As we leave the draft, you also have free agency plans for the Bulls. What do you think they should target in free agency? They don't have any cap space. They're against the cap, but you do have the pending restricted free agency of Jimmy Butler. He's in line for a $70 million plus contract. He's coming off a Most Improved Player award, and last year him and Paul Gasol was probably the best two players on the team. Do you give him that max money, or do you trade him or let him go for future savings?
Well, the Bulls are in a situation where they have to pay him. Unfortunately, they can't afford to lose him. And it kills me that the Bulls always get themselves in these situations with these marginal to good players where they end up having to pay the guy because if he's not there, they take a left turn. So they're going to have to pay him. So he'll be back. You'll pay him the $70 million. You probably lose Dunleavy. You probably lose Aaron Brooks. I think the coaching staff is going to push Nico, Snell, and McDermott. So those guys will be playing more minutes next year. We'll see how ready those guys are going to be. But you have to pay Butler. You know, you got to give him that big contract, that $70 million. And
what do you do with the bigs? It's been a lot of talk about Joakim Noah, Paul Gasol, and Taj Gibson not necessarily fitting in the new pace and space offense that Fred Hoiberg is going to implement. Who would you give away, and who has the most value?
Taj Gibson has the most value. Even though he had a season where he came down a little bit on his production, he looked a little bit off because of the team change and Nico, and the minutes were a little different. But I still think he has the most. He has the most to offer. You know, another team is going to look at this guy's decent age. You can get some pretty good production. Paul is 35 years old. Noah's very banged up. We're not sure if he's going to be able to turn his health around. So I think Taj Gibson is a guy that you really want to push if you're looking to get rid of one of those three that you want to push to get some decent back in a trade.
It pains me to say this, but I would trade Paul Gasol. He's coming off an All-NBA selection, first time as an All-Star starter. double-digit machine, led the league in double-doubles last year, played 78 games last year. But at 35, as you mentioned, I think the wheels are about to fall off. I believe he can still be productive, but the days of him playing 78, 80 games are over.
But Guru, let me ask you this question: what is a team going to be willing to offer you in a trade that's going to make much sense to even make that move?
I look at last summer when Paul Gasol was a free agent. He was courted by the San Antonio Spurs heavily. He was courted by the Oklahoma City Thunder heavily. He signed with the Bulls. He was courted by the Mavericks, amongst other teams. Paul Gasol was as in demand as Carmelo Anthony was because he could fit so many rosters. And with a favorable contract and the production he's coming off of, I think the Bulls could get a solid piece. Now, are you going to get a starter for him? Probably not. But can you get two guys, maybe a backup big to replace him and a backup guard? I think that's all you want for him at that point. At this point is to get some rotational pieces to stretch out the team, to play more specialized roles. And I think what the year he's coming off of, you can easily get that for Pau Gasol.
The production was there this season, so I mean, you might find that fool that says, we could push this guy for another year or two and see what we can get out of him. But I think more teams are going to be biting on Taj Gibson.
I like Taj, but he's a one-dimensional player. He's a defensive. He's really a heart, toughness, muscle type of guy. He doesn't give you much offensively.
Right.
From time to time he can hit that 16-foot jump shot. He can put some points on the glass, on the board, in the post sometimes, but he's just too inconsistent. The jump shot is too inconsistent. The offensive game is very inconsistent. Even for his size, he's not a big rebounder or shot blocker. He's not bad, but he's not, a big rebounder or shot blocker. Now, I think that there's not many teams that look at him as a starter. I think he is a high-level role player, and I think he's best in that position. So as much as I like Taj Gibson, he has a lot of holes in this game, and I think when you look at the NBA landscape, big men who can't shoot are not in demand. Pau Gasol is a shooter. He's not this three-point shooter that spaces the hell out the floor, but he's a pick-and-pop 17 to 18-foot assassin. We saw Powell hit those shots all year. 17, 18 feet. He's a good rebounder. He's a shot protector. He's a scorer. He's a winner. Even at 35, I see his value being a little higher than Taj Gibson. Joakim Noah with his expiring contract and basically expiring health, he's not going to have much value around the league. So I think Pau Gasol, when you look at all the teams that were interested in him last summer, the Bulls can get more for him than any other player in that front court.